Welcome to CIC 15. Let's go check out the work of Suzanne Song at the Williamsburg Biannual. The Williamsburg Biannual is an arts center that's established in the neighborhood of the Domino sugar factory, right where the Williamsburg Bridge makes landfall in Brooklyn. Of the 3 floors in the Williamsburg Biennial building, what you have is the first floor with Suzanne Song's most recent paintings, the Pumas paintings. And as you go from gallery to gallery and seeing a wider body of work, what I'm seeing is a kind of restless project that goes modal from type of approach to type of approach. What you have is a willingness to be conscious through contrast. And yet, it's all in the context of prestidigitation. A trompe-l'oeil. Trompe-l'oeil was often invoked in the description of her project. Me, generally, historically, when I see trompe-l'oeil paintings, classical trompe-l'oeil, it never did much for me. But these works do. They do play tricks like a magician. Look here, see here, kind of thing. And I don't feel, personally speaking, a kind of reductive, simple kind of my own personal reaction to magic tricks and things like this. Because in her work, involves the spectator as you're drawn in to decode what is shadow, what is 3 dimensions, what is 2 dimensions. You are drawn into the trick of the eye that is not only within the space of the viewer at some distance from the art object, but you're drawn into the project itself, into the depths of the support, which I appreciate a great deal. What we have here is a Korean American, educated in Clemson University, graduate degree out of Yale. It's funny being half-breed of any type, constantly interpolating between cultures. But what you see here is more Western than some mere hybridization. Geometric art, op art, minimalism, recalling like Agnes Martin or the famous artists that went down to millimeters in their work. And as for going down to millimeters, what you have is an art project that is extremely intense in the handling of materials, a kind of level of intensity that's astonishing because it's superhuman. No doubt this kind of attention to materiality and the exactitude in which the materials are put together are drawing upon the well springs of Korean tradition of Dansaekwha. In my research online, I came across a YouTuber, which I'll link in the description of this video, who described chomu, a kind of cultural demand to bear hardship.
Have thought about on my own as a Korean American. Korean culture really has this intense element of the idea of endurance and this philosophy of how holding your emotions in and pushing through everything beyond the face of even the most difficult standards or difficult environment is really considered valuable and such a foundational trait of not only one's like intensive character but one's like own morality. And I really think this culture of belief of endurance really stems from the belief of Han, which is kind of in traditional Korean culture explains how the sorrow and pain of shared experience of surviving through political and just difficult strife actually unites the Korean people in this unspoken nationalistic sense of sorrow and empathy that one feels for having going through these extremely difficult experiences together. And the phrase chamo in Korean kind of roughly translates to endure, and this is a phrase that I have heard way too many times by my mother snapping at me when I was complaining a little bit too loud in public, but I really think this phrase chamo is something that goes beyond just a reprimand that's like snapped at to younger children. I think it's the idea of enduring, of chamo, of always needing to hold it in, is this really solid representation of endurance culture that is bred in South Korea. This kind of really warped perception of philosophy, of understanding how suffering needs to be this prerequisite in order to achieve any form of happiness or success.
And as a parenthetical, her works are included in a collection, a famous Dansaekwha collection in Korea. She's represented by a gallery in Korea. So her tapping into that part of her heritage is a very real thing. The Dansaekwha story is worth your investigation. But again, that intensity, the pencil lines that construct it, she never erases. The troweling that she uses in order to create her pumice paintings are astonishing in that they're exact when they are spread across the surface, leaving a kind of decal edge on the side, a kind of willingness to balance that out. And I don't know how many times that she had to pull that troweled edge across the canvas in order to reveal that sort of that broken edge, which she hides from your view again, which is very interesting to me, through the sort of airbrushed faux shadows that she's playing from canvas to canvas. In her very flat canvases, she's showing a kind of, again, an illusionistic space that's extremely shallow. And the illusions that she's compelling here are illusions of geometry, of folded paper, of sort of faux three-dimensional space, which in other parts of her work, on a table on the second floor of this art center, she has laid out for you, in a way kind of like a magician, sort of like laying out the tools of the trade on a table curiously stretched in linen. On that table, a number of artifacts that are laid out for your inspection. In the center of the table, note that there is a canvas that is folded in the center like a book. And right next to it is a literalization of the folds that she paints into this object. You have a two-dimensional evocation and a three-dimensional realization sitting right next to each other. And note on the corner of this table, a piece of paper with, I think, if I remember correctly, 5 triangles that are cut into it. And then again, another airbrush shadow that makes the paper look like it's folded, but it's not. And then, if you look closely, the linen support of the table itself was sprayed with that airbrush, which can be seen through the cuts of the paper. Small little details that look like they were tossed away and yet they were carefully placed. And this is the kind of thing you see over and over in her work. On the traditional canvases that she would stretch, shaping only the tops and bottoms of the canvas, a very straightforward construction of support. And again, the shadow airbrushed on the tops and bottoms to make it look like a folded paper thing. And on the very corners, the edge of the painting pulled back from the edges of this linen perimeter. Exactly so. And again, that chamois, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, the Korean imperative to endure, in the exactitude of the geometric constructions, in the shadows that she sprays onto them, on the extremely fine masked lines that she's pulling down to crispen the edges of these paintings. And for work after work on the basement floor, in a corner, a trompe l'oeil space with a simple line and airbrushed shadows to conjure very carefully and very gently out of that corner a three-dimensional space. So, as a body of work, which I had initially seen in the Bienvenue, Steinberg, and Choi gallery in Tribeca in a group show several months ago, it was a great opportunity to see a wider spectrum of her work. In the Williamsburg Biannual, established in 2024, This is the third exhibition. The previous one is James Cassaberry, and the one before that is Brian Alfred. So the Williamsburg Biannual is a biennial. It only shows 2 shows a year. At first, when I learned about this space, I wanted it to be designed as a rebuke to the commercial gallery system and to the institutions, a kind of critique. I don't think it is now. I had a chance to speak with the architect Jorge A. Zapata, who is the proprietor of GAZ, Jazz Architects. The other organizers of this institution, they are fellow alumni from their grad school days at Yale. And the story, the origin story of this art center is that Jorge Zapata created what architectural history, many architects have done, build their own projects, build their own houses, typically. I'm talking about the Eames house, for example, or Frank Gehry's house, or Corbusier's house. If you research it, you'll come up with easily 20 or 30 architectural projects done by the architect as object examples of the kind of architecture that they want their clients to be attracted to. Smartly, Zapata built his own. But curiously, unlike these other projects, Zapata had built an art center, not a home for himself. It's extremely curious and actually brilliant, because in not building a home, he won't be attracting other homes from other clients. Hopefully, and I hope he does, will attract institutional work, which is extremely difficult level to access for an architect. Usually in an architect's history, an architect's career path, they'll start with homes, and then to break from homes into institutional level, extremely tough thing to do. So a very smart play by Zapata. So describing the building, in the Domino sugar factory zone, which was rezoned in 2005, and a lot of the gentrification that's been happening there lately is right now coming into sort of fruition. Zapata had built his project into an existing 1920s building, the brick facade perimeter maintained, and out of the center of which is another 2 stories, which are to be office spaces into this, and at the time of this recording are unfinished. Tough thing building buildings. And in the middle of the pandemic, when there's a kind of pause in construction, these alumni from Yale got together, friends, and many of them had this idea of creating an arts organization together. And lo and behold, one of them, Zapata, had already built the actual building. And so they created this project, which was very nice, not designed as a rebuke intentionally against an art world, but its very existence is flying in the face of the commercial gallery system, where you have to mount exhibitions every month. This sort of hamster wheel cycle compels many galleries down the road of a kind of throwing the dice, taking chances, throwing artists' work up on the wall to see which collectors would be attracted to them, living hand to mouth during this whole time, hoping to survive, engaging in the art fairs, laying out lots of money, selling maybe for lots of money, but laying lots of money out at the same time. And not as an institution either, biannual, not like the Whitney Biennial, where there's this large mandate, since abandoned, to tell the story of American art every 2 years, or the Venice Biennial, which tells a story of nations coming onto a world stage, and all within the sort of curatorial leader sort of harmonizes all their works together on some sort of national, international kind of overbearing kind of mandate. What you have is a very soft program. Its hours, for example, are open 1 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, only from Thursday to Saturday. The door still says by appointment only, which when I knocked on the door, it was locked. But luckily, Jorge Zapata opened the door and we got to speak. I was quite lucky, I guess. It invites slow looking, which I think is sorely needed in this art world today, art world where we're constantly scrolling through our phones, Instagramming ourselves into hell. It lacks desperation, which is quite refreshing, and I do like their project, and I wish them all the best, and I hope they go to greater and greater accomplishments in the future. Again, very, very young project. 3 exhibitions since they first opened in 2024. Quite astonishing. And Suzanne Song, whose works I got a glimpse of in the group show a long time ago and got to see again. And very happy I was able to do it. I was able to learn a bit more about Dansaekwha, Korean artwork, and get an appreciation for an artist that's extending geometric abstraction into the future. So, this is CIC number 15. Have a good day.